Hey there, it's Kimberly here with Knit for Brains, and I am so excited because my friends over at David and Charles Publishing said, hey, we know you're using up a lot of yarn. We think that you need to learn some more granny squares. And I was like, no, okay, please. So today we're going to be talking about the Every Way with Granny Crochet. 50 shapes in classic granny stitch. So stay tuned. So my friends over at David and Charles, and I say friends because I love them. And okay, first of all, in true sense, what they put out, the authors that they publish are phenomenal. The patterns, but it's not just crochet books or knitting books, but they also do like books on embroidery and coloring and even like metaphysical, like meditational and alternative stuff. Everything. And their books are amazing. They have really good, strong binding. Like I have used these books, opened them, lots and lots of patterns. They don't split. They don't fall apart. Good quality. And I just love these guys. And they said, we know that you're trying to use up your yarn and you're not going to buy any new yarn in 2025. And I was like, you pay attention. And we know that you love granny squares. And I was like, you really do watch my channel. Sort of, kind of. Anyways. And so I saw this book and I was like, yes, I want to try this thing. Julia Maddle lives in Toronto, Canada. This is the author. Really cool, funky. Like I would want to be friends with this woman. She's been crocheting and knitting and a designer for like 10 plus years. And her patterns are, you can tell just by the way she looks, she's on fire. This girl is fire. You just want to be friends with her and you know her patterns are going to be cutting edge. So we're going to step outside the box and we're going to take a look at these books or at these patterns. Now, this book came out in September of 2024. So it's been out for a little while. It might have like slipped under your radar. It slipped under mine. So it is, you don't have to pre-order it. It's out there. It's on Amazon right now for $24.99 it's coming in at. But I also saw it on sale for Amazon. So I'm going to include the link where you can just find it in my Amazon storefront and you can find it yourself. But let's take a look. 50 patterns. I was like, that's a lot of patterns of granny squares. So of course, you know, you're going to get your basic. If you've never crocheted before, how do we get into it, right? So we're going to talk about the slip knot, the foundation chain, working into the foundation chain, which that's something that I really kind of want to learn, the where you basically single crochet and then you go into making your foundation chain. Here's a foundation ring. And then they also talk about the magic ring, and everybody loves to do the magic ring. That's my preference when I'm doing granny squares, is to do the magic ring. Some people, it's a little bit of a technique to learn, but once you learn it, it's a game changer. Man, it's just amazing. So then it talks about the abbreviations and then your basic stitches, your chains, your slip stitches, and so forth, right? And then how to do, because there's a lot of different ways to do a granny square. If you do a chain between each one of the granny stitches, or how you do your corners, or where you meet up in your corners. There's a lot of different things. So you figure out what works for you, but she gives you some really good ideas. Of course, we're going to talk about gauge, and then we're going to talk about like working in rows and rounds. So a lot of basic information. The first like 20 pages are all basic stuff. Here she talks about charts. Now, you know, I am a big fan of charts. I love charts. As a matter of fact, I taught a friend of mine and her daughter how to crochet a couple weeks ago because the daughter really wanted to learn the granny squares. And I showed her a chart. She's like, oh, I hate those things. I was like, you know what? You hate them until you understand them. And then I taught it to her and she's like, this is amazing. And I was like, yeah, you can now find a pattern in any language because as long as you're using the universal symbols for charting, then you'll be able to figure out any pattern, no matter. I've done patterns that are written in Japanese. I've done patterns that are written in Russian, Spanish. It doesn't matter because even if it's not their first language, as long as they've got their charts, you're good to go. So here she talks about a lot about like using color. And now we're going to talk about the shapes. So you got your classic granny, whether you want to do it in a solid or whether you want to mix it up and do some different colors. Again, here are your charts over here. Okay. All the different versions. Now we've got the granny squares in the rows and the rounds. Again, using the charts. Diagonal and a half square. Using those charts. I love this. So here's 3. Granny square 4 is quads color granny square. Using the different colors. an offset square, a circle and a square, the log cabin square. I've never actually done that. That's kind of doing like the color blocks, and that's really fun. Tilted spiral square. So she's not giving you actual patterns of garments or blankets. She's giving you granny square patterns. What you decide to do with them is going to be, you know, your own. That's where your creativity comes in. This I'm interested in because I just tried to do a top that didn't come out with the whole tilted look like it's supposed to, and this is interesting, so I might have to try this one. The mitered square, coming in the different colors. Diamond in a square, love that. You're going to be seeing, you can see I've already started to put little post-it notes on the ones I want to try out. The acute triangle, now we're getting into the triangles. Equilateral triangle, half diamond triangle, half diamond triangle too, so a little bit wider and then a little bit more narrow. Here is a half square triangle. I mean, so many different options. Half rectangle triangle. And as I said earlier in 2025, the very beginning, we talked about some of the trends that are coming out. Two of the big trends we're addressing here. And number one is granny squares. Granny squares are not going away, but you can now evolve them, right? So whether you're going to do a granny square, learning the granny stitch and all the different applications is going to be huge. The other thing that's really big right now is not just crochet, but it's implementing and using crochet and knitting together. So maybe you knit a sweater with a granny square cuff, or maybe like a collar or something like that. Or maybe you do some crochet and then maybe you knit some stuff on the end. So it's incorporating both of those together. And then you can also even like embroider and bring in the embroidery into like, you know, a pattern or flowers or something like that onto your knit. So incorporating all of those together. But the granny square isn't going away, my friends. So learning the different more patterns and different techniques is really going to step up your game, and you're not going to get bored. It's not just your basic granny square anymore, friends. This is not your grandmother's granny square. Here we've got some ovals. These are great for rugs or anything else you wanted to do. Here's an egg shape, so a little bit more of an offset shape. Of course, your heart, great to put on as like an emblem or like a embellishment for a sweater. Or you can square it off and make it into a square with a heart in the center. An arch, we could call that a rainbow. You can call it anything you want. This would be great for like a wall hanging. The tulip design, that'd be great for a flower, and then do a little crochet strip down the side, great for an embellishment. Teardrop, again, you could make this into jewelry. I mean, so many different applications. It's endless, right? So it just is going to give you a lot of inspiration here. Granny square number 29 is an ornament. And then the half ornament, should you want to do that. Leaves, again, you can use this for your embellishments. The triad, now that's interesting. It's almost like a 3D shape. She said her favorite shirt has a print featuring this shape, and I've struggled to find a name for it. So whatever you want to call it, it creates a great graphic. Interlocking pattern when worked in 3 different colors, crocheted in 3 V-shaped sections, each one built on the previous. Diamond shape. These all look very easy to master. Again, using that chart, but like very doable. Hexagon, that's really kind of more of your traditional. Then we got the half hexagon. And then another design in the half hexagon. Octagon. Zigzag. If you're looking for just a really comprehensive granny stitch, I'm not even going to call this a square. I'm going to call it a granny stitch pattern book. I highly recommend that you pick this one up. Here's a boot. Fun. Here's your stars. These are great for blankets or baby blankets. Again, you could square that off and make a couple different colors and styles of squares. Any size 5-point star, a 6-point star, an 8-point star. Goodness gracious. Untangling rectangles. And then here we get into the rectangles, which is something that I've been wanting to do. And sometimes I'm not quite sure of the starting stitches. I know that you have to move around it, but how you start getting it going, I wasn't, I'd have to kind of look that up. So this is a great way to start. I'm actually going to be doing some of these with just some variegated yarns and let the yarn do what it wants to do. A nice, pretty variegation of a yarn, and just kind of let the yarn decide where it wants to go. Half square rectangles. Parallelogram, goodness gracious. A mitered corner rectangle. And then we're going to get into some of the finishing. So that's going to be blocking your squares, the best way to block them, blocking multiple motifs. And, you know, you can use regular blocking squares, or you can just, you know, some blocking mats. It's really up to you. And then how to seam them together and the different types of seaming, the mattress stitch, the whip stitch, the slip stitch, on the wrong side, on the right side, and the back stitch seam. So even outside of working with the granny stitches and granny squares, and this is more the join as you go. Now this stitch here, this one is really interesting. When I did all of the Project Welcome Home squares, I did a lot of the join as you go, and it was so fast. But learning that technique takes a little bit of practice, but once you get it, you're just sailing. You're just sailing along, friends. And then here we've got a lot of the different borders. So it's really comprehensive. This I love. This is called the sampler. So I'm thinking of this like, if I've got some scrap yarns left over after my, you know, no buy 25, and maybe I want to do like a couple different kinds of squares and shapes with those samples, and at the end of the year, then I can make this really cool sampler blanket. So that's what she's doing here. Great way just to kind of use up those fun yarns and just kind of come up with a really fun, funky pattern. So this here is the Granny Square Every Way with Granny Crochet, 50 shapes in classic granny stitches. And it says Granny Crochet that's too hip to be square. And I would totally agree. This is not just about the square, but it's really stepping outside with all the different shapes. By Julia Maddle. Love this book. It's by our friends from David and Charles Publishing. Love them. They just put out the best stuff, the best authors, just quality across the board. And I was really excited to get my paws on this book. So check it out. I will include the link to Amazon, to my storefront. You can find it there. Like I said, it's retailing at $24.99. I found it on Amazon on sale, so it was like $17.99, something like that. You can also find it on, you know, probably some of your local craft stores. I don't know if it's in the big box stores, but your, you know, small shops will probably have something like this. But it released in September of 2024. Every Way with Granny Crochet. Highly recommend. Thanks so much for watching. This is Kimberly with Knit for Brains, and if you've just found us, I am so glad you found us. Welcome. Welcome to our little square, a little corner of the crochet world. If you like this video, please go ahead and like it. Maybe share it with a friend. That always ranks us up a little bit in the numbers. And please think about subscribing. Doesn't cost you anything, but at least then you get all the notifications of when we're publishing new material. Thanks so much for watching. This is Kimberly with Knit for Brains. And as always, I'll see you soon.